The parable of the sower is featured in 3 of the 4 Gospels, so it's a really important parable to pay attention to. Even in Mark's Gospel, Jesus goes as far as to say, if you don't understand this parable, how will you understand any of the other parables? Jesus felt that this was worthy of an explanation, and here's how I understand what Jesus was saying to his people in first century Palestine. Jesus' people were a subjugated people, living under Roman imperial oppression, who were occupying their ancestral lands. If they tried to rebel, the Romans enacted horrific acts on them. They were largely farmers, but what we would understand as sharecroppers. They were also day laborers and peasants whose labor went to constructing great palaces for the Romans. Can you imagine what Jesus might have felt seeing his community experience a great deal of inequality, poverty, and exploitation? So seeing all this injustice around him, Jesus was very critical about the injustices that were exercised by the Roman elite and the religious leaders who sided with them. The central teaching Jesus shared with his people was that we must work together to usher in the kingdom of God here and now and reject the kingdom of Rome. Actualizing the kingdom of God meant being free from Roman oppression. And Jesus lived that out in incredibly daring ways. He pushed religion and cultural tradition to center the most marginalized. He invited people to leave their comfortable life. He broke bread and barriers with those you weren't supposed to be with. And most importantly, he stayed faithful to that vision, even if it meant carrying your cross, which in his time meant that it would lead you to a Roman execution, the crucifixion. This is a groundbreaking vision and calling. A world where everyone, including women and the poor, are equal and valued. People from different ethnic backgrounds eating together. Jewish people finally living on their land free from imperial occupation. You can almost feel the hope, excitement, and the challenge that Jesus was proposing to his people. To get to this kingdom of God, we need to act. This is the word, the seed, that Jesus references in his parable of the sower. It's a challenge parable. Jesus is challenging us to act boldly and to take risks in the pursuit of justice. And what I love most about this parable is that Jesus uses nature and the elements to explain his core message so that everyone could understand. So let's jump into the birds. Jesus says that when someone doesn't understand the challenge of the kingdom of God, the evil one just snatches it up before it can take root in our heart. And this might look like being so moved by someone's testimony about the climate crisis at a nice benefit dinner, but then going back to your old habits of consumerism and energy waste after the dinner. So scaring the birds in this case would be to reflect deeply on the invitation from this testimony and to ask God and your community what steps you all can take to address this issue. Then Jesus moves to the rocks, where we might be incredibly inspired after going to an immigrant rights protest, and you begin volunteering with a local organization. But after some time with them, you notice your neighbors and family making comments about you and criticizing your involvement with them, so you stop going. Throwing out the rocks in this case might look like throwing out the rocks of people-pleasing and caring what others think of you. Throwing out these rocks makes more room in your heart to listen to where God needs you. Then Jesus talks about the thorns, which might look like when people get caught in their comfortable life. These are the thorns of, I'm too busy. I just want to relax. Or worse yet, I don't want to go to that neighborhood. These are the thorns that are normalized, but they keep us in a trap of privilege and comfort. These are the most dangerous thorns because they not only prick you, they prick the whole world. Pruning these thorns might look like going to your block club meetings in your community, or forming a robust social justice ministry at your parish. And the thing about pruning is that you have to constantly keep doing it. Just like scaring the birds and throwing out the rocks. How are we making our heart and soul fertile soil where the word can bear good and holy fruit? Where instead of making excuses about our time, energy, and comfort level, we say yes to Jesus' challenge. We are in a historical moment where our actions have tremendous consequences. The Spirit is calling and has been calling out to each of us to let the gospel challenge fall on rich soil. As collaborators with God, we are meant to be out in the world, organizing for equality, helping one another, innovating tradition, and so much more. Let us never fall in the trap of believing that Jesus' parables were just some interesting short stories, because we risk missing the entire point of the gospel message and Jesus' mission altogether. Parables were meant to unsettle Jesus' people and us today. So let's reflect on our own birds, rocks, and thorns that prevent us from rising up to this challenge, the pursuit of justice and equality in our communities. Thank you.